Morning, it's Friday, December 12th, 2025. I'm meteorologist Andrew Pritchard, taking a look at your Canadian Prairie weather story. I am recording this video from a hotel room, and I don't have my professional studio microphone with me, so if I sound a little off, a little more echoey, hopefully you can just kind of suffer through it this week. We'll be back to a professional sounding record a week from today. But near-term weather risks, I kind of recycled some of these bullet points from last week, made some slight adjustments to them. It is cold right now. Temperatures minus 20 to minus 35 across the prairies early this Friday morning. We've got big temperature swings over the next 10 days, but staying mostly cold. We've got a big surge of some warmth that's going to come in early next week, but you're going to find yourself right back down in the minus 20 to minus 30 range for a little bit as we get into the mid and late part of next week. We do have more snow on the way. It is going to be generally light in nature in most areas, but the chance for some heavier snowfalls in kind of western and eastern portions of the prairie in the 7 to 10 day time frame. Now, the last 7 days of observed precipitation, we continue to be in this pattern where we see clippers running, over the top of the high off to the west and then through Alberta right down into the Great Lakes part of the Corn Belt. We've continued to see these kind of light powdery snows that are starting to stack up in some areas. We've got portions of the prairie that have 15 plus inches of snow on the ground. We do still have some localized areas here, though, that we've got very light, little to no snow on the ground. We're still looking for that first significant snow. We do have more opportunities, more storm systems, I think 3 to 4 of them over the next 10 to 14 days that'll bring that opportunity for additional snow. Now, the satellite picture here early Friday morning really illustrates the pattern classically. In fact, I saved this to show during my talks as I go through the rest of the winter, because this is about as textbook as it gets with this big ridge across the Pacific. You see the jet stream flowing over the top of that. We've got this atmospheric river event ongoing across portions of the west coast. A lot of moisture being delivered to British Columbia. The moisture is mostly wrung out over the higher terrain here as the storms come up. The air goes up over the top of the mountains. It's squeezed out. Most of the moisture, is squeezed out in the form of snow there and coastal rains. And then the remnant area of low pressure rides over the top of that ridge and kind of runs from Alberta right down into the Great Lakes. And so we've got these lows that are tugging some Arctic air down with them. They've got some remnant moisture with them, enough to bring some light powdery snow. And we just kind of keep this pattern going where storms run over the ridge and run right on through the Canadian prairies into the northern plains. Again, pockets of snow and chances for snowfall really every couple of days in a pattern like this, from Alberta all the way down to where I'm at recording this video down in Illinois. We had snow yesterday. We've got more snow tomorrow from these clipper systems that continue to run through the region. And as I mentioned, they bring cold air with them direct from the Arctic. So we've got bitterly cold, dry air in place. And an air mass like this, extremely cold, actually works against heavier snow. You get these very light, fluffy, powdery snows, kind of moisture-starved Alberta clippers is what we call them here, as they run from Alberta down into the Dakotas and the upper Midwest. But bitterly cold, dry air is the really big story right now, with kind of snows being a second element of that. And that's going to be the case as we run through the weekend. Just some very light areas of some snowfall here expected. Heaviest across central and southern Alberta as we run through the day today. This would be Saturday morning, pretty quiet across the prairies. And then as we get into Sunday, we'll look for some snow generally north of Highway 16, but can't rule out some flurries on Sunday across portions of Alberta and Saskatchewan, and then eventually over into southern portions of Manitoba. This should not be a significant accumulating event. And then as we get into next week, we'll have additional clippers running through the region. So your total snowfall through the weekend, this will take us Friday, Saturday, Sunday into Monday morning, December 15th. Again, heaviest snow across southern Alberta, southwestern Saskatchewan. Can't rule out flurries across the rest of the prairie, but not a lot in the way of accumulating snow over the next 3 to 4 days. This is the European model over the exact same time frame. Good agreement here. Again, southern Alberta, far southwest Saskatchewan, you're looking at anywhere from 3 to 5 inches of new snow over the next couple of days. North of Highway 16, some light snow trace to maybe a couple of inches, heavier as you get up toward the Edmonton area. Very sharp cutoff between where we could get 4 to 5 inches and then very little snow right around the Edmonton area. And then as we add in the next 10 days, so this takes us all the way through December 22nd, see the whole of the prairies covered in here, but it is not significant snow. You got heavier chances west and east, but everyone just a pretty good chance over the next week of picking up maybe 2 to 4, maybe 4 to 6 inches of snow here. We're talking about maybe 10 to 15 centimeters of snow across much of the prairie right now, showing this in inches, but 10 to 15, pretty good bet for 50% of you. Some of you end up a little bit less, and then folks who are a little closer to the Rockies there and then a little further east into Manitoba may exceed that 10 to 15 centimeter range. Again, a big snowy swath across the prairies, but you can see what happens here. You see the extremely heavy snow across British Columbia, coastal areas, higher elevations, coming up over the Rockies, getting some heavy snow as well. But then these systems, they run from west to east or from northwest to southeast across the prairies into the Great Lakes, and they have much of their moisture wrung out. It's again, bitterly cold. It's very dry. You just stack up, a couple of inches maybe of light powdery snow with each of these systems as they kind of sneak through. And so the winter vibes are certainly turned up, but you're not necessarily getting buried by significant winter storms and blizzard conditions across the region. It's extremely winter, but it's not extremely heavy snow right now. Now, as we go through the next 10 days, we're going to see a big pattern shift across North America, where we're going to, you can see the difference here with the ridge across Western America and the big trough and the flow coming basically out of the Arctic on the left. That's the forecast here over the near term. And then as we get into the December 20 to 25th timeframe, we see a big shift toward a ridge of high pressure nudging up at times into the prairies. That's what gives us the big warmth early next week, but then really expanding across the central U.S. with a big trough, a big area of low pressure situated off the west coast there from British Columbia, running down into portions of the western United States. Now, what that does is it really shifts up the flow of the jet stream, the orientation, the direction, so we're not any longer getting blasted by the Arctic. We should get into a pattern that offers more in the way of what I mentioned, what we've been lacking is these bigger areas of low pressure. Now, I'm talking back half of December, last 10 days of December right now. So that's not going to be really reflected in this near-term forecast. I'll show you kind of what we've got with certainty and then where I think this thing is headed as we get towards the end of December. Now, near term, you're going to watch these systems run over the ridge and then dive across the prairie. And that's what brings us these shots of bitterly cold air, these chances for flurries. This is your Friday night, high pressure in place across the prairie on Saturday. Can't rule out some flurries, but should be a dry Sunday for us across the prairies as well. So as we get into Monday, see a bigger area of low pressure make its way in. Again, this one also pretty moisture starved, so we're talking about some blustery winds. Can't rule out some flurries or some light showers. This one drags some milder air north. Again, the area of low pressure tracking north of the prairie, so that puts much of the prairies in the warm sector. With the area of low pressure near Highway 16, much of the prairies are in the warm sector on this one, so you get that tug of warmer air and then that push of colder air on the backside. So it's a brief warm-up. You see some Arctic air spill back into the region. We see another area of low pressure on Wednesday. Again, blustery winds, a better chance of some snow across the prairies from this one, and a better chance of some stronger winds. Maybe some higher impact winter conditions with this one on Wednesday as it runs across the region. Again, not going to bury the region, but this one could bring some winds and some heavier snowfall rates with it as it quickly, again, traverses the prairie on Wednesday, December 17th. High pressure on the backside, bitterly cold air, another really cold period mid to late next week, and then you see additional chances, another area of low pressure with some potential blustery winds and some light snow with it Friday, December 19th into Saturday, December 20th. So the biggest storms, I would say, are that Wednesday and Friday storm system next week with the chance for some winds and maybe some snow. Another area of low pressure, it continues to just send storms running right across the U.S.-Canadian border. Each one may be progressively further south. Again, that one Monday, the 15th of December, tracking up near Highway 16. As we get to Monday, December 22nd, now we're starting to get into that pattern change where now the storms are not coming over the ridge and diving down. They're coming in around the base of the trough and lifting into the region. And this is how we generate really intense areas of low pressure. This is how we tap into the Gulf and we bring in a much more moisture-laden storm track that could eventually bring in some more significant snowfall to the region. Now, I'll run this towards the end of the loop. Know that I have lower confidence in the specifics here. We're out to December 24th and 25th, getting close to the Christmas holiday here, and this is what the European model is doing. Again, don't lock yourself into what's going on here. This is an area of low pressure tracking through the Midwest, through the Corn Belt. But what you see here is a much broader shield of snow with this one across the northern plains, parts of the upper Midwest. This is a storm that, again, lifts from the southern Rockies into the northern plains of the U.S. This is much more reflective of a storm track, being driven by a trough in the west and a ridge in the east. We get these storms lifting up toward the northern plains, up toward the prairies, with a bigger shield of heavier snow. So near term, next 10 days, we get blasted with these moisture-starved storm systems that bring light snow, gusty winds, bitterly cold air. And then as we look out towards maybe December 23rd through the 30th, potential increases then for these higher impact storm systems to make their way in. Just kind of one more time running through this to get out the timing, zoomed in on the prairies. Again, pretty quiet weekend. This is your Saturday, Sunday. This is now Monday morning. Storm tracking north of the prairie, a mild Monday and Tuesday. Colder air tracks in for the storm system on Wednesday. This is Wednesday, December 17th. And then this is as we get into Friday, December 19th. Another area of low pressure tracking across the region. Now, I mentioned the last few lows, we've been kind of having a lack of winds. These ones are a little more tightly wound. There will definitely be some gustier winds with these, potentially gusts, 60 to 70, maybe some areas, a day or two pushing 80 kilometer per hour wind gusts here with one of these lows that tracks across the region. Again, with some light snow and some cold air, it's not going to be a pleasant week to 10 days across the prairies, but still kind of looking for that big, heavy snowfall event across the region. Looking at this from a probabilistic standpoint, the probability of 3 inches or more of total snow over the next week on the left and the next 10 days on the right. And again, over the next week, southern Alberta, southwest Saskatchewan, you get that, better snowfall here near term. That's in the next 24 hours. But a lot of the prairie, pretty tough to get 3 inches of snow. Over the next 7 days, it's really kind of Wednesday and Friday of next week that I think the best chance for some heavier snow is going to exist. And then beyond that, we start to get out toward that December 20th through 30th, where I don't have anything I can show you right now. We'll check back in absolutely a week from today, but I start speculating that the end of December, the beginning of January may be a little bit more fruitful for the prairies as far as heavy snow goes. Now, here's the forecast of the next 10 days. Just again, this illustrates it. Heavy snow to the west. These systems are moisture starved as they make their way across the prairies. So certainly frequent chances for light snow is what I would say over the next 7 to 10 days. It's going to be snowy. There will be several days with snowflakes in the air across the prairies, but none of these systems likely to produce a widespread swath of significant, very heavy snow. Temperatures in the near term, I mentioned a big pattern change. We'll see that push of warmth as we get into the early part of next week, followed by a big surge of cold air mid to late next week. So minus 17 for the high in Calgary today, 10 above zero on Monday, all the way back down to minus 10, minus 13 as we get to Thursday and Friday. Here's a similar look. Again, Monday is that warmest day, Monday and Tuesday across the prairies. A little later as you move further east. Here's the temperature forecast here in Saskatoon. We'll finish with Regina and then Winnipeg. A high of 3 on Tuesday, minus 3 on Wednesday, back to highs in the minus 15 range mid to late next week. We'll talk next week on Friday, December 19th. It may be snowing across portions of the prairie, and I may be telling you about some more significant storm systems in the last week of December.